Okay, so in this video, we're going to go through advertising and PR, which are two parts of the promotions mix. All right. So this is a graph from your book, and essentially it just walks you through the process where the sender or the marketer is sending a message, and it has to make its way through this somewhat convoluted process until it gets to the receiver. The number one issue facing marketers today is that the issue of noise. So this process of going from getting a marketing message into the head of a consumer is extremely challenging in today's environment because today's environment is characterized by clutter. So many of you have probably seen pictures of, Times Square in New York City or other places that just have billboards everywhere. And that's often, those images are often cited as sort of examples of this problem, but it's much wider. So most of us see thousands of marketing messages on some level every day. So brands on people's clothing, car emblems, TV commercials, web ads. I think in the internet that we consume, a huge chunk of it is taken up by advertising. So as humans, we've sort of created the ability to, because we can't process all that information. If we tried to actually look at each piece of stimuli that was put in front of us, it's more brain capacity than we have. So as humans, we've sort of developed this sort of defensive mechanism to, not attend or not pay attention to marketing messaging. So we have this sort of back and forth where we have clutter as a problem. Consumers are actively sort of ignoring it, and marketers are like, okay, well, given this issue, what more can we do to make sure we break through that clutter? So it's sort of this, vicious cycle of more ads and more consumers, trying to not attend to those ads, and then more ads as a result. So we have this, marketing landscape. The promotional landscape in particular is characterized by this issue of clutter. I love this image in particular because it is. It shows marketing as literal clutter, not figurative clutter, but actually literal clutter. So this is a guerrilla marketing campaign from Mini Cooper, where after Christmas they put giant sort of Mini Cooper actually sized boxes in the trash where people might be throwing out their wrapping paper from Christmas, with big sheets of wrapping paper attached to it, as if people had actually had a Mini Cooper under the tree that came in a box. And so I just think it's a great example of marketing being not just figurative clutter, but literal clutter. I also mentioned an example of guerrilla marketing. So guerrilla marketing is one tactic that marketers use to break through the clutter. So essentially, what guerrilla marketing is, it is a play on guerrilla warfare. So guerrilla warfare would be some sort of fighting, a battle that did not involve traditional tactics. So the essence of guerrilla marketing is that it sort of does its sort of untraditional, sort of fringe tactics that are designed to be so interesting or surprising that they break through this filter. So some examples you see here on the screen. One is Hubba Bubba, the gum manufacturer or brand. They did a promotion where they blew up bubbles and with the Hubba Bubba brand on them, and they went around, in metropolitan areas putting the gum on the face of, billboards that were there. So I don't know how the people who paid for those billboards felt about it, but Hubba Bubba sort of a campaign they did. You see Shark Week, one of their promotions was they went around to beaches and set out these surfboards with shark-sized bites out of them. And then when people looked at them, it said Shark Week and said where you could watch Shark Week. Probably also this was designed, oftentimes these are designed to get some sort of press coverage or sharing, which we'll talk about later in public relations and buzz generating. The Yeti example, we always try to have a Yeti example. Early on in the Yeti days, when that type of cooler was sort of unknown, it was new on the market, something Yeti did is they would throw in a free hat or T-shirt with every cooler purchase as a way of getting their brand out into the world and starting conversations with it. They still to this day include stickers with every Yeti product with the idea that you're going to put that sticker on something and sort of signal your affiliation to the brand. So for a while, it was really popular in like Texas in particular to have a Yeti sticker on your truck because it signaled something. All right. Product placements are another kind of tactic that marketers use to get around this issue of defensive information. Not defensive, trying not to pay attention to ads because they're so subtle. The idea is you don't recognize it as an ad, so it sort of slips through the cracks of your defenses. So I used to subscribe to a fishing magazine. I was flipping through it one day and I see this ad in the where people like send in their pictures of fish that they've caught. So you have this kid like catching his first redfish that they put in there, and then but right next to it you see like a Bud Light branded cooler with a Bud Light bottle that's lime bottle that's turned just right towards the camera, and this woman holding this fish she may or may not have caught, and there's probably about a 99% chance, 99.9% chance that this is a paid insert by Bud Light, right? So Bud Light Lime. So they were, trying to get an ad in without actually putting it as an ad because it's in a place where people are sort of not expecting an ad, and so they're less defensive. So there's a interesting documentary, if you want to check it out, by Morgan Spurlock called The Greatest Movie Ever Sold. That's a documentary on that addresses this topic. If you're interested in sort of advertising as a career, you might want to check it out. So another thing. So we consumers who are defending against ads will be receptive to ads if they're good. So ad agencies try to make ads that are good, and so the knowing what's going to be a good ad is not necessarily easy to do. So there's been some ideas around there. So we have maybe it needs to be simple. It has to have some sort of unexpected element. It needs to have concrete benefits from a credible person, evoke emotional responses, and think in stories. So all of these are sort of leveraged in that, like, you can't overtax people's brains. Yeah, it has to be simple and concrete and evoke emotional responses, and people tend to think in stories or schemas, so leverage that. Leverage these sort of non-cognitive emotional responses, and just kind of keep things simple. So one of the things that I used to do, so I did a master's in integrated marketing communications, and one of the things we used to do in my class was we would look at historical ads and think about which ones, what's called pulled best. So which was the highest in terms of recall. So if you're interested in doing this, there's I put the link to a website here where you can go on to and do this a test where you look at two ads and try to figure out which one performed better than the other. And so it's not always easy to tell, but if you sort of if you can kind of think of some of these things, oftentimes you can do it. So this one, I'm pretty sure it's the one on the left that did better. It's a ad for carpet, where it's sort of you can see the carpet. It's sort of a clear benefit, where the other one is more abstract, and it's like, oh, if you buy our carpet, it'll feel like running on sand as a child, and maybe not maybe a bit too, maybe not quite as concrete or as simple as we would need to have an ad be memorable. So anyway, it's something to check out. I'll just show you one more here. So here we have the Lipton tea on the left-hand side, and it's got some sort of messaging to it. I'm not really sure. Something about the name for decaffeinated tea that doesn't get lost in ice is Lipton, and then it has like the name of the brand and the dots there. over on the right-hand side, we have a Tetley's iced tea that says empty at the top. And with the idea that, I see the word tea in there and it's empty and that must mean it's good. I'll just tell you that if you look at the recall and persuasion on these things, the Lipton ad tends to do much better, right? So here we see when we're thinking about a product, we want a nice big version of the product. We don't want some messaging that's too abstract, or we have to it's empty, so it's good. I don't even see that there's any tea there. Whereas the Lipton one looks like a nice that looks like something I want to drink. So again, so we have. In the advertising industry, people pay lots of money for people who they think can create ads that people want to watch. So, might check it out. Try that quiz if you're interested. Another way, the more recently that one way to make ads more interesting for people to watch is to make them extremely relevant. So, essentially, platforms like Facebook and TikTok, their whole proposition is that they, by sort of watching what you do and what things you like and who you're friends with and what demographic information you put in your profile, they can guess really well what kinds of ads you would that you would be interested in reading about. So I have a picture of a cordless rechargeable under-counter light there that popped up on. I've been talking about buying one for a few months really, and then I'm on TikTok and all of a sudden one comes up in my feed, and it's how did they know that I needed this thing? I don't know if if they really knew, but this is the idea that we have. There's consumers who are trying not to pay attention to ads, who are trying to swipe through them. So we can either make ads extremely compelling and unusual and surprising so that I'm motivated to figure it out, or I can make them, just really good ads so that information will stick, or I just make them, maybe the ads don't have to be that great, but they have to be so specifically tailored to the person. And so that's the essentially the idea that sort of fuels some of these social media platforms, that they can know you at such a deep level that they'll be able to put targeted ads in front of you, is the essence of why they make their money. The best yet is sort of self-selected advertising. So one category for this is advertainment. So advertainment is in that space. It's longer. It's the first example of this was, I think, the first sort of widespread use of this was by BMW. When in the early days of the internet, they produced this series of miniature films featuring BMWs racing around with Clive Owen as the driver. He's and in all these crazy situations, Guy Ritchie was the director. Or they would get all these famous directors and Clive Owen and do these extended 10-minute commercials and then put them on the web, and people would just go watch them because they were critically acclaimed small films featuring BMWs. Right? Yeti has done kind of a similar thing and continues to do so. They create these little out documentaries, featuring these sort of really highly credible outdoor celebrities and anything from fishing guides and rafting guides to competition barbecue people that are all kind of use Yeti products, and people will go to screenings or watch them on the web and on YouTube, and so people are sort of self-selecting into this ad. And once again, this is sort of a particular kind of ad that where the content is really essentially what people are coming for. It's not necessarily that the ad is so good at selling the product, but the ad is good at selling itself, and along the way we kind of have essentially sort of a product placement where we have the ad featuring the product. So it's kind of a combination of some of the other things we've looked at. More commonly these days, when we think about self-selected advertising, it would be something like social media. So we have the new sort of, I don't know, primary thrust of marketing seems to be engaging with influencers who have followers, right? So if you can build up a followers of people that like you and trust you and will buy the stuff that you tell them to buy, then you can monetize that. Marketers are willing to, have pay for you to promote products, all this kind of thing. So here we see a sort of stereotypical, fashion influencer, and then also my daughter down there below who is working on herself building a YouTube channel. One of her videos, packing for the lake, I'm sure got more than any of my marketing videos ever will. So anyway, we all know about influencers. Search engine optimization. So search engine optimization is another place that marketers spend a lot of money. And the essence of what's happening here is when you search for something, so if I search for European travel, I have instantly identified myself as a person who's interested in that, right? Or top things to do in New York City. Right? Now all of a sudden, there's companies that know I've self-identified, I'm actively looking for information. So when I'm in that kind of a situation, it's like me, I'm very open to reading ads or, looking for information. So that's like the ultimate type of like target, someone who is not only a good target or a good match for the content, but who's also indicated they are actively searching for information on that topic. This is why Google is so scared, because ChatGPT threatens to take that away, right? So ChatGPT, instead of typing into Google best places to go in New York and getting fed a series of ads that people have bid on through Google AdWords, ChatGPT just has read all the guides on visiting New York and travel sites, and it just gives me a list. Right, so then there's no more need to like filter through ads. So Google right now is kind of semi-terrified because AI promises to sort of disrupt their whole business model of this search engine where people talk about the things that they're interested in learning about, and then learn about them in something that's interspersed with advertisements. ChatGPT kind of cuts that out for now. So another thing you may have heard of is this issue of the filter bubble. So the filter bubble is this idea that because we self-select into certain kinds of media, so we follow certain followers, we search for certain things, companies are in the business of only showing us things that we want to hear, right? So Google doesn't, if we say best place to go in New York City, it doesn't send us something like, well, have you ever considered, upstate New York? Because its business model is designed around putting things in front of people that people want to hear, and it's with the end goal of selling them stuff, via advertising. All right, and so. And when you get, any time when a social media platform or something is recommending, it's looking at what you've done in the past and saying, oh, you will like this other thing. So it tends to build these bubbles where, because it's trying to only put things in front of us that are consistent with our demographics or our previous choices or who our friend circle group is, then we tend to get these filter bubbles, and arguably a number of people said that these are sort of contributing to some sort of societal issues. And at the end of the day, the reason we even have Google and other things aren't out there trying to divide society. They're out there trying to sell stuff. So it's sort of like a side effect of effective marketing. All right. So those kind of things, deal with this issue of the number one issue that advertisers have to deal with, which is clutter. So again, we do things from making ads surprising and unexpected, so we'll process them, or sneaky, so that we'll process them, or really good, so that we'll pay attention to them, or we try to put ads in front of people that only information in front of people that they want to hear, right? With the idea of not wasting money on ads they don't pay attention to. So a lot of that issue, creates some interesting social phenomenon, like ads everywhere in our space, exceptionally targeted, sort of information streams, and a lot of interesting stuff. All right, so that was issue number one, which is, again, clutter. Issue number two is sort of credibility. So the credibility issue is, at the end of the day, the reason consumers are sort of defensive and try not to attend to ads too much, in addition to not having the processing power to actually attend to all the thousands of ads we see every day. The other one is, at some level, we don't trust marketers. So marketers are saying, hey, we have this thing, we think you would want it, give us your money and we'll give you this thing. And so there's this sort of, reluctance to sort of trust marketers who are trying to separate us from our money. So the second issue that advertisers have to worry about, or marketers, is credibility. So there's a number of techniques people use to get around the credibility issue. And the first one we're going to talk about is public relations. So public relations is distinct from advertising in that you typically do not pay for public relations. So public relations would be some sort of media coverage that you get that you don't contract for. So whereas advertising, you might pay for a certain number of clicks, or a certain number of impressions, or a certain number of minutes during a television show. With public relations, you're just trying to do something that sort of gets media attention or gets people's attention, but you're not contracting with anyone. And so as a result, you sort of lose control over it. So I've sort of highlighted, just to kind of talk about different flavors of PR. The first one is damage control PR. So damage control is essentially the situation when something bad has happened and we want to get out in front of it and sort of stop people talking about it. Sort of some historical examples here. So probably, let's see, what do we have here? Let's start with the oldest one. The oldest one is the Tylenol murders. So at one point in I think it was the 70s, somebody went around to drugstores in Chicago and took Tylenol caplets, which at the time were the kind of capsules you could take apart and empty out, and filled them with cyanide and put them back together, and went and put them back on shelves. And so people then went to the store and bought these cyanide-filled Tylenol caplets and capsules, I guess it would be, and took them and died. And there were instances where someone handed them out at a family funeral, and multiple people from the same family, died as a result of this thing. And I don't think they ever found the person that did it either. But how this is relevant to marketing is how Tylenol handled the situation. So what they did is they recalled all the Tylenol. They put out all these warnings: stop buying Tylenol, stop buying Tylenol. There's been some possible deaths related to it. They, ultimately they redesigned it so there's no more capsules that you could take apart and fill with other stuff. They got rid of that. They put they sort of invented tamper-proof packaging. But the main thing was that they sent out a lot of advertising saying don't buy Tylenol, which is sort of contrary to what we normally think as a marketer trying to do, right? Our product is potentially dangerous, don't buy it. And so what happened was, of course, as you might suspect, sales of Tylenol went down, but in the short term. But in the long term, they sort of went back up, and then far beyond what they were previously, because Tylenol had been so sort of honest and forthcoming that people trusted them. So there's been other instances. So I think the article that's linked there was an issue that Toyota had with some sticking accelerators, a while back. And the authors said Toyota missed their Tylenol moment. They could have said, hey, everybody stop driving your Toyota, bring it into the dealership immediately. We're going to fix this. But instead they were like, oh, it's driver error. It's probably this other thing. It's probably not us. And eventually it came out that they kind of knew what it was. And they missed the opportunity to build that trust. So damage control, PR. There's been another few, the other historical example there is on the lower left-hand side. That is United Breaks Guitars video. So this is an early example of like viral video doing damage to a company's stock. So this guy was a musician. He was traveling around with his band, and he was forced to check his guitars, and he saw the luggage handlers handling his guitars not very nicely, and then it got broken. And so United wasn't doing a very good job of fixing that service failure or dealing with it. And so he wrote this song and put it on YouTube, and it went viral, and United lost like tons of money, right? More recently, we have, I think it was not Kim Kardashian, it was one of the Kardashians, said, is anybody even using Snapchat anymore? And Snapchat lost $1 billion valuation overnight. Lululemon had some quality control issues that they dealt with in sometimes successful ways, sometimes not successful ways. So there's this issue of, again, examples of damage control PR, where we have this thing that's and the companies are reaching out and doing public relations to try to sort of tamp down a sort of a negative situation. A fun one that I have that I like to sort of share is one of my friends who's also a marketing professor at University of Alabama, was teaching a lecture about brand appropriation and using the examples of Yeti butting, which, if you don't know what it is, it's this strange social phenomenon where girls in bikinis sit on Yeti coolers and take pictures of themselves. And she was talking about this through the lens of brand appropriation. And as she did it, someone took a picture and appropriated her lecture by putting the brand of University of Alabama on it, and then put it on this website called Old Row. And it got all this tens of thousands of likes, and got on the news, or she got called into the PR department of the university to figure out how to talk about it, and it's just kind of a funny thing. But anyway, always have to have a Yeti example. All right. Cold calling. So probably the most common type of press or public relations is sort of dealing with press releases. So you have people whose sort of job is to promote a company's activities to the media, with the idea of that the media press will pick up on the story, and then they'll get free exposure for the organization. So a lot of agencies we're introducing a new kind of headphone. We want to get some PR for that, and their PR agencies will put together, something about that and try to send it out to media outlets with the idea of getting exposure. One of our friends used to do the PR for Duke University, the medical program there, and she would do PR from there. She then went on to do PR for Pfizer during COVID. So, you can imagine a lot of times that companies are trying to promote their products without paying for advertising. They'll have professionals who are PR professionals who are reaching out and developing media contacts, and then sort of essentially doing a sales job, where hey, I got this client, they got this new product, we think it'd make a good story. What do you think? And here, we'll send you through a press release, or we'll put some stuff on Twitter or use social media. Check it out, and maybe you'll write about us. So Melissa had a bunch of health writers that would follow her blogs, and as she was posting on this stuff that was new and interesting at Duke University medicine medical department. So. if that doesn't work, you can do this thing called an advertorial. So you see these a lot in travel magazines where it looks like an article or an editorial, but it's actually, if you look at the tiny print at the top, you see it's actually an ad. So this is similar to kind of, I would say product placement, in that you're reading the ad because you think it's actually content, but then you sort of realize later it's actually an ad. So sometimes companies, it's a little questionable, I think, sometimes, but we'll try to, get their, essentially create an ad that looks like an editorial in order to overcome that credibility issue. All right, so next we're going to move on to what I've started calling shareable stunts PR. So a shareable stunt may not be product related. It's more like a reminder ad in that it's sort of just trying to get the brand in front of people. So the cold calling variety of PR is very product centric. It's often saying, hey, here's our new product. It has these benefits. Aren't these benefits newsworthy? Whereas a shareable stunt may have aspects of that, or it may not. So here's some sort of traditional sort of media focused things that do kind of reference the product. So things like, Westin did this event in Times Square where they put out a bunch of Heavenly Beds, which is their famous mattress, and they invited the media to come. They invited people to lay in the beds and try them out, and they invited the media to come film this, and it was sort of generated a lot of interest because like beds in Times Square and people lying in them. I think they hired models to lie in them at some point. It just was like a publicity stunt. You may have heard that term. All right, when you think about like famous people on red carpets, people are like, oh, who are you wearing? And the brand is like sending dresses to famous women with the hopes that they'll wear them in a sort of a event situation that's covered by the media, and people will ask them what kind of dress it is, and then the brand will get exposure, right? So what kind of here we see, in the last one we see REI that is, saying, running a promotion where they're going to be closed on Black Friday. Like what kind of store runs advertisements about being closed, right? So they're trying to get media attention and sort of promote something about their brand and being outside rather than shopping. Some are not sort of focus related. So a lot of the Twitter accounts that are just kind of making jokes. So you see like the National Park Service, it's cold outside when you go outside and it's cold, and then they sort of go back and forth with people. The idea is that it's entertaining to people, the Twitter feed, and so it's not really saying anything about the national parks. It's just sort of keeping the national parks in front of people, so that maybe they're thinking about a vacation, they think about the national parks, right? So brands might send product to influencers, and I hopes that they'll talk about it. And sometimes, as we see with the Bud Light example here, that can some wasn't really anything about the product. They were just they were trying to reach out to a new demographic and send and as we know, sent some Bud Light cans. This individual's picture on them, and this individual talked about them online, and it generated a huge social media first, and then like traditional media sort of firestorm after that. So, but the goal of it wasn't really to talk about Bud Light. It was just to like get exposure for their product. So word of mouth, or people like sharing stuff online, is very powerful because we tend to trust other people more than advertisements coming in at us. So if we hear something from a personal source, it's much more influential in determining purchase. So word of mouth is sort of one of the most persuasive forms of communication, which is why another tool that marketers you'll see using sometimes is multi-level marketing. So if you get the chance, I would recommend watching this documentary called Lula Rich. It's about essentially a pyramid or a multi-level marketing program that sold women's like leggings and other clothing with crazy prints. And essentially then they started doing a sort of a multi-level structure and grew at an unsustainable rate, and eventually the company got into trouble. But it's very one of the powerful things it leverages is that it's they have these parties where people come to your house and look at clothes, and you're sort of in their social group, and you're talking about how great the leggings are and how soft and nice they are, and people are like, okay, well, I trust this person. I came to their house. I feel like I ate their cookies. I feel like maybe I should like buy some of their leggings. And then also the person says, hey, if you need a side business, and would like to make some money selling these awesome products, you can do that as well. So the problem with multi-level marketing is it expands exponentially. And so you can only get, if you're, expanding like 6 people at a time. So you have 6 people at the beginning who each recruit 6 people, who each recruit 6 people. By the time you've done that, 13 times, you're more than the population of the world. So obviously not everyone in the world can be a Lulu rich salesperson, and who would be their customers, right? So that being said, there are a number of these business models that people have invested in. I think Warren Buffett invested in Pampered Chef. Arbonne was around for a while. Mary Kay is sort of a classic one. It's just one, it fixes the credibility issue that marketers have because it's essentially your social people from your social group in your neighborhood selling to you. And the other one is it satisfies this need that we have in business to grow at an exponential rate in order to be well received by investors. Here's kind of a fun historical example. And I don't even think this kind of thing is like a precursor to social media marketing or influencer marketing. So there's this movie called The Joneses, starring Demi Moore and David Duchovny, where they are people that like move in. They are professional influencers, undercover influencers. So they move into a town, and then they're the coolest people in the town, and the kids are in their 20s, but they pretend to be high school kids, and they go and they have the coolest cars and the fashions, and everyone wants to be like the Joneses, and so they end up selling a bunch of stuff. And so it's all these undercover marketers who are hidden around in different neighborhoods, influencing how people, wanting to consume in order to keep up with the Joneses. So this kind of undercover marketing is not just a fictional idea. It's actually a real thing. So it's sometimes referred to as stealth marketing, buzz marketing. I think one of the sort of textbook examples of this was when camera phones first came out. What Sony hired people to do is go around to a Statue of Liberty and other places and hand people a phone and say, well, oh hey, would you mind taking my picture in front of the Statue of Liberty? And people are like, where's your camera? And they're like, oh, it's on the phone. You just double click this button here. And I was like, oh my god, I've never seen such a thing as a phone with a camera. Can imagine a time before camera phones, but the people didn't know that they were taking a picture for an actor who was hired by Sony to promote the phone. They just thought they were doing somebody a favor, as sort of a human kindness. And so this thing got a lot of criticism. One of my friends worked at a liquor distributor in Chicago, and one time he's like, hey, I need somebody to go out with me and drink Di Serrano, this cocktails all night at bars around Chicago. Do you want to come? I'm like, yeah, I'll do that. So what we had to do is we would go to the bars and we'd be like, hey, I wanted this kind of drink. And the bartender would be like, how do you make it? And we'd be like, oh, what's the Di Serrano? And you do this and this and this. And maybe we buy a few for girls at the bar or whatever. And so it just went around. Di Serrano paid his company to promote. This was kind of like a grassroots buzz marketing, stealth marketing kind of thing. I think now in the age of Instagram and influencers, this thing is just, this sort of tactic is just not at all cost effective compared to how massive effect you can get so quickly with something like this via online influencers. But I thought you might be interested to see like this idea of influencers is not really exceptionally new, right? We've always sort of had this idea that there are people out there who can, move public opinion and, sort of slide under the radar as not really selling you something, but, talking to you about something and get you to buy it. But now, of course, we have influencer marketing, which is much more effective or efficient at this. All right, and with that, we'll finish up our sort of advertising and PR section, where we went through the two kind of major issues that marketers had. So the first one being, clutter, and how do we break through this clutter issue where we have so many marketing messages that consumers are sort of actively avoiding being marketed to. And we talked about a couple of sort of baseline strategies for that. And then the second issue that marketers really face in this domain of promotional activities, which is essentially you're asking for people's money, and so you have this inherent sort of credibility issue in this space. So, it's a super interesting challenge, both of these, and there's just some techniques to get through it. So next, we're going to move on to another part of the integrated marketing communications mix, which is personal selling.